If you want the absolute best keyboard that you can get for $100 or less, I think I know which one to recommend. First, a quick disclaimer. I use the Azio MGK RGB Mechanical Keyboard. That is a mouthful. I used it for about a week, actually almost exactly a week, and each day I typed between 2 and maybe 10,000 words. So I did get quite a lot of use out of this keyboard during that period of time. Now, I did use it basically full time. There were a couple of times where I used my Surface Type cover when I wasn't sitting here at my desk, but other than that, I used it all the time. First, let's talk about the technical stuff. This is a mechanical keyboard first and foremost. Now, if you don't know what a mechanical keyboard is, you may want to read my blog post or my written review of this product, which you can find linked in the description below. All you really need to know about mechanical keyboards versus other types of keyboards is that there is a very specific sound and feeling that you get, and it's exactly the same each time you press a key. And what's so great about this is that you get a nice audible and sensatory feedback in your fingertips each time the key press is actuated. So it can make it feel a lot more accurate and a lot more pleasant to type on a mechanical keyboard versus a membrane style keyboard like the Microsoft Sculpt Comfort, which is what I was using prior to the Azio keyboard I'm using now. This particular keyboard uses the Kale blue switches. Now, blue switches tend to be kind of on the loud side. Now, I personally don't really mind this, but if you are in an office environment, it might be annoying to other people for your keyboard to be this loud. The Azio MGK RGB Mechanical Keyboard does feature full key rollover on PC, which essentially means that you can press all of the keys all at once, and the keyboard is capable of registering all of those key presses independently at that same time. Now, this obviously is not practical or useful to have all of the keys actuated at the same time, but it's nice to have that flexibility if you are maybe in production or if you're a gamer and you do need to be holding down several keys all at once. On Mac, this keyboard does support 6-key rollover, so not quite as extensive, but at least there is something still there for gamers. This keyboard will connect to your PC or Mac via USB 2.0. It does not require any special software or drivers for any of the features to work, which is fantastic. The USB 2.0 cable is braided and fabric, which I really liked, I really appreciate, although I prefer to go full wireless with my desktop accessories. A keyboard like this is really going to need a wire, and we'll talk more about that later on, but at least it's nice to have a very high quality USB cable attached to this keyboard. Now, what's so special about this particular mechanical keyboard and the reason that it needs to be wired is the fact that it has full RGB LED backlighting, and there's an independent LED backlight for each and every key besides the spacebar. More on that later. In my reviews, I like to get the bad stuff out of the way first so that overall you don't have a bad taste in your mouth when you're finished watching the review. So let's go ahead and get the bad stuff out of the way first. Now, while this keyboard does include a palm rest, it's not padded in any way. It's a hard plastic. It's UV coated, but it is a hard plastic. I do like the design. I like the way that it looks, but my left palm got a little bit sore after the first couple of days of using it. That did go away over time. I guess maybe my muscles got a little bit more used to using this keyboard, but the palm rest is not padded, so you may or may not like that. The only other problem that I had with this keyboard was with the spacebar. Now, the spacebar, the backspace key, a few of the bigger keys do make a slightly different noise when they are pressed, but with the spacebar, I was actually getting a little bit of a ringing spring sound that would happen when the spacebar was released. Now, this doesn't happen every single time, it's pretty rare, but it may be kind of annoying to those that are particularly particular about the way that their keyboard sounds. All right, now let's talk about the good stuff. If you are a gamer or somebody who types a lot, I think you're really going to enjoy typing on this keyboard. As mentioned before, it does feature Kale blue switches. So there is a lot of feedback, both audible and the feedback that you get on your fingers when you are typing. It feels very accurate, very clicky, very responsive. I really love typing on this keyboard. It's simply a joy. Now, I should say that I am not someone who is especially picky when it comes to typing. I actually typed on the original Surface Pro type cover for, a few months. That was my only keyboard that I used, and I wasn't bothered by that too much. My hands did get a little bit sore after a lot of typing, but I was pretty okay with dealing with that. Now, I did switch over to the Microsoft Sculpt Comfort desktop, and I have been using that for the last year or so, and I did enjoy typing on that as well, but I did feel that the keys were a little bit mushy, and it was maybe slowing me down in my typing a little bit. I didn't have any of those problems with this keyboard in the, maybe 20 to 100,000 words that I typed during the time that I was using this keyboard. For those of you that are really interested in the sound of the keyboard, I'll go ahead and play a sound sample for you now. Now, underneath each one of these keycaps, besides the spacebar, is a full RGB LED backlight. Now, one of the things that's so special about the backlighting on this particular keyboard is, well, it does have a number of different lighting modes, and you don't need to install any special drivers or software on your PC for all of this to work. Now, there are a few different color modes available on this keyboard, and they aren't really the first one will just cycle through all the different colors that can be produced by the LEDs in this keyboard. The next one is kind of a splash mode. It sends a ripple of color throughout the keyboard. The next one goes ahead and sends a wave of color across the keyboard. Then there's the color marquee mode, which basically sends a rainbow of color flowing across the keyboard. So all of these modes are very nice to look at. There is actually one mode that is actually useful. I found it to be very useful for me as I'm getting used to where the shortcut keys on this keyboard are. It may also be very useful for gamers or anyone who is in production. The mode I'm talking about is the customization mode. So you can actually set custom colors to each individual key. And like I said, each of the keys have their own backlight besides the spacebar. So gamers could set W, A, S, and D to red if they wanted to, as an example. People in production who need to use specific shortcut keys very frequently can set those keys to a different color. So I found that to be a very useful and a very attractive mode as well. Now, in all the modes that have been mentioned, if there is some sort of effect flowing across the keyboard, you can change the direction, you can change the speed of that flow, and then you can set the brightness level. You can adjust the brightness anywhere from 25 different brightness levels. At the dimmest, you're barely going to be able to see the backlight, and at the brightest, it's going to be ridiculously bright if you have all the lights turned off in the room. So I was very pleased with the backlighting. There are also 3 indicator lights to tell you if numlock, caps lock, or Windows key lock are on, and those lights are also very bright. To the right of that, you have a mute switch, so you can mute and unmute your PC's volume, and that worked flawlessly on Windows 10 for me. And then there is a volume scroll wheel, which also worked flawlessly on Windows 10. As for my overall experience with this keyboard, I would absolutely recommend this keyboard to anyone who is looking for a great keyboard and has about $100 to spend on it. If you're interested in picking up one of these keyboards for yourself, you'll find an Amazon link in the description below. Thanks for watching.